The Channel Mom Show, celebrating you with Jenny Dean Schmidt.
Brought to you by Pediatric Dental Group of Colorado, creating positive and rewarding dental visits for kids of all ages since 1977.
I have unanswered prayers.
Okay, welcome back to the Channel Mom Show. Yes, unanswered prayers. That happens to a lot of people. Although my theory is they're not necessarily unanswered.
The answer is no.
Yeah, the answer is just not what you were necessarily hoping for. We are back with Julie Ziglar Norman, and it's our pleasure to have her. Of course, her daddy is Zig Ziglar. For those of you who are, I don't know, let's see, over 35 probably. Yeah.
I think he was big in the 90s, so
yeah,
that's 20 years ago at this point.
Yeah. And I read at least one of his books. Is it See You at the Top, Julie?
That was the first one, yes.
Yeah, and then Over the Top, is that the other one of the other ones?
Yes, that's another. There were actually 30 books.
Yes, I know. He wrote a lot. But there's some that are a little more famous than others. And he also wrote one about children. Can you remind me of the title of that one?
Oh, yes. That one was Raising Positive Kids in the Negative World, and that's the book that outed me to my parents.
Yes, I'm aware. So tell us about that.
Yes. When Dad wrote that book, he wrote a great deal about our family. And he had each of us kids read it to be sure he hadn't said anything that wasn't true or that we were uncomfortable with. And as I read the book, it became very apparent to me that it was time for me to share with my dad actually I wanted to share with both parents, but my mother informed me she knew enough and didn't want to know more at that time. So she didn't sit in for the conversation, but I did have to tell Dad about the kind of secret life I'd led because he had taken a particular public personality, to task for some behavior she did, and I had done the same. And I just believed, I always believed that there was any day now somebody was going to come to Dad and out me.
Yeah.
And I just didn't want him to have a double shame, a double embarrassment because of me. And people used to always say, Zig, why don't you get into politics? And, oh, man, the dread and fear I had because I had so many secrets. But I actually, Jenny, learned that you are as sick as your secrets when I sat around the 12-step tables and learned how to share my story and to get past that shame. And I believe that's one reason I'm able to be so open today about my past is because getting your secrets out takes the power away from them.
Absolutely does. Things grow in the darkness and in bad ways. I want to remind our audience that we're speaking with Julie Ziglar Norman, the author of Growing Up Ziglar, a daughter's broken journey from heartache to hope. And would you mind, Shelley wants to ask you a question or two too, but would you mind telling our audience, because I was reading through your book last night, and it's so beautiful and profound and honest, and I want to thank you for that, about the specific problems that you struggled with, because I want the moms and or dads who are listening today, because I fully believe that people have been sent to listen to this show for a reason, about the specific things that you struggled with so they can know that you are not perfect and that you know pain and that you've come out of it. So can you tell people a few of the things you were struggling with, like alcohol?
You bet. The first time I drank, I was 14 years old, and I drank until I had a blackout drunk. I don't remember the last part of that night at all.
Wow.
And I found out many years later, when I finally did get help, that is not an uncommon experience for people who become alcoholic drinkers. Not uncommon at all. Matter of fact, it's kind of a hallmark. If you sit around tables long enough, you'll hear it over and over again, that the first time they got blackout drunk. And that was me. Now, not all of my drinking was blackout drunk. Very little of it was after that. It was just very consistent and deliberate later on.
Yeah.
But I did use alcohol to deal with the negative feelings that I didn't know what to do with, because I really did also believe what my father taught was that, and I still believe that everything is better with a positive attitude. And a positive attitude is not particularly denial, but I had feelings of deep sadness and regret and depression. I hated confrontation, but I found if I had a drink or two or three or more, all of those feelings went away, and I no longer felt defensive or fearful. And so I truly used alcohol to change my feelings. I used men for acceptance, because I so desperately wanted approval and wanted to belong. And for some reason, I still haven't figured out, Jenny, I always felt like I owed somebody something, and whatever they asked, I should do. I just didn't have the word no in my vocabulary, and I'd cry over it at night, just get in bed and cry, practice saying no, and I just, when it came time to stand up for myself, for some reason, I just flat couldn't do it until years and years later.
Right, and you got married very young. You would sneak out of the house. You would sneak out of the house,
Yes.
and you got married to a man who was 18 years older than you, and that ended badly, and you became a single mother, which I think a lot of moms need to hear today, that you were out there struggling with alcohol, with eating, with trying to please men, and there you ended up back in your parents' home, a single mother of a precious baby. So you are a mama. In fact, you've got 6 children in your life. Is that correct?
Well, I actually have 4 children in my life now, 12 grandchildren and 1 great-grand.
Okay, well, because in the book it listed the 4 children, but then there were 2 others.
Oh, yes, my other children. Those are my children in heaven.
Shelley has a question for you,
Okay.
but let me just quickly say that. How did you reconcile? Because I think a lot of moms who struggle with depression, and I've struggled with depression, have this pie in the sky thing, especially if we are people who follow God and have church and Jesus in our lives. We think, oh my gosh, why can't we be picture perfect the way that people think we should be? And you've got this daddy that's looking this way. What was that conflict like? And how did you come out of it when you had shame and guilt and all these things that were considered sins in your life, and you were depressed and you weren't feeling right and you had shame? I mean, how did you deal with that dichotomy?
Well, actually, learning how to live life one day at a time and staying out of the past and out of the future had a lot to do with that. And that's where, the 12-step program helped me. In a strange way, I wish everybody could need a 12-step program, because there are a lot of tools in there that would fit for, I don't care if you have addictions or not, it's just a good way to live, is to stay in the present, because your past has already happened, but when you think about it, it feels like it's still happening to you. There is absolutely no reason to keep rehashing the things that have come to pass. We need to spend our time today learning what we need to know to not repeat that in the future. Yeah. And it's hard to get honest with yourself. And I don't know if you got to read the story in the book about the day I really learned that I had a victim mentality. Was the day my mother told me, I cannot listen to you complain about your bad marriage for another minute.
Oh.
She said, you are unwilling to do anything to change, to better it or to change it. And until you're ready to do something about it, I can't hear it. It hurts me to hear how miserable you are. We can talk about anything else, but not your marriage.
Wow. And by the way, we should tell people that now you're very happily married.
Yes.
You remarried to a wonderful man, Mr. Norman, and we just want to say that so they don't think you're unhappy.
I would also add, Jenny, that even though we are extremely happily married, 11 years into our marriage, we had a 1-year separation where we had to work hard on our actually, we worked on our relationships with God individually, and then when we came back together, we were in good shape to be the kind of spouse we were always supposed to be. And we've been very, very happy now for many years, almost 29 years we've been married.
Oh, bless your heart. Shelley, what's your question?
Yeah, so we were talking a break about, we've seen in our kids, and you had mentioned it earlier, the duplicity of them. And I know that while my kids are active in church and volunteer in the community, and they're great kids to be around, but I can see hints of them when they're around their friends that they're kind of someone else. Is there something that to help them, some advice you have to help them be who they really are, even around their friends?
At all times? Yeah.
I think it comes from the parents just reinforcing to their children who that they belong to themselves and to no one else, and that they don't owe anybody anything, and that a leader is who they want to be, not a follower. And when you instill in children morals and values from an early age, for instance, I didn't have a clue what virginity was because nobody ever talked to me about it. So I didn't know what the loss of that would mean to me emotionally, spiritually, or in any other way. So for me, it was an act. There was nothing more to losing my virginity than it was a initiation rite to get involved with a group of kids who wouldn't let me into their group without it. Every child should know the emotional price they pay for getting involved on that level, and how that carries out. And only the parent can instill a child's sense of self-importance, that no one has a right to them and that no one can tell them what to do. Yeah. And to help them know who they are within themselves at an early age and what they stand for.
Sure. And also, what about by the way, we were talking earlier, you probably didn't get to hear it, my commentary was saying that loving on your teens and paying attention to your teens is just as important as your babies, and it may be a little harder once they're teenagers because they're not cute and toothless and helpless. But that's where those kind of lessons come in. What do you say to the mom or the mom who's raising a child who does have those other feelings, like we all do because we're humans, of depression and shame and guilt, and they feel like they should feel these other things, or they have temptation or whatever it is? How do you get them to work that out in the way in which you stuffed it?
Yeah. Well, I believe, I lived with this false idea that I had to do everything myself. And there was some pride wrapped up in that. I didn't want to admit that I was having trouble or that there were problems. I mean, it was the last thing in the world I wanted anybody to know, was that I would hang my feet over the side of the bed in the morning and sit there for 45 minutes just rehashing what a terrible person I was and how miserable my life was. And it was a really vicious mental cycle of self-defeat that I did. And yet I was having the hardest time in the world to break it. And the truth is that the worst depression I ever had, I started coming out of when I began an exercise program. And I think that probably reinstated some endorphins, that I had lost. Because if you stay depressed too long, your body quits making those.
Really?
And yes, it does. It does. And that's why people who are mourning and grieving, who get depressed and can't seem to get over it, might need, a little help from an antidepressant just to get over the hump, to get their body making those endorphins again. Yes.
Well, it's good that you admit that. And we have 2 minutes left, so I want you to be able to tell people about Ziglar Women and how to get a hold of your book. We are speaking with Julie Ziglar Norman, the author of Growing Up Ziglar. If you'd like her book, 303-297-1510, we'd love to give it to you today. And Julie, can I just say this? I'm so happy that you're being honest with moms about all of your pain and your struggles, and that still you've come out in a good marriage at this point and a happy mother to children, because moms need to hear that. They need to hear you being real and saying you can overcome these things. So please tell moms, because I know you have an upcoming conference, and they may really benefit from you and what you have to say. I mean, you're just as good as your daddy, Julie. I want you to know that.
Oh, thank you, Jenny. All right. Well, our Ziglar Women Conference is comprised of a bunch of Ziglar women. It's myself, my mother, the redhead, Bad Mother Famous. I interview her. She shares her wisdom. My oldest daughter, Dee Dee Galindo, my youngest daughter, Amy Fair, who's been a missionary for several years and is presently walking through a serious brain cancer with her 2-year-old. It is a phenomenal day of refueling, rejoicing, and just getting refocused on what truly, truly matters in life. And it's going to be the 16th in Hurst, Texas, at the Hurst Conference Center. My book can be purchased anywhere.
Your book can be purchased anywhere. And quick, the website, so if moms want to go to that conference.
Okay.
What's the website?
ZiglarWomen.com, and that's Ziglar with an A, Ziglar.
Wonderful.
ZiglarWomen.com.
God bless you, Julie. You're wonderful.
You too, Jenny. Thank you.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
Do the same. Bye-bye.